Hi everyone, I thought we'd try something a little different just for fun. I tend to share what I think are interesting questions on various WhatsApp groups, online forums, Reddit, Facebook, Ask the Base Medrash groups, and beyond. And I figured that some of them are interesting enough, hopefully, that they're worth sharing here as well. So I'd like to review a couple of them with you. These are going to be questions that, as far as I know, I have not seen any very compelling answers. So if you do have an answer to any of these questions, it would be amazing if you could share those either in the comments to this post, or if you want to reach out to me on X, it's x.com/Isaacson. First question is based on a real life case. The question is essentially, what's the halacha of a haunted Airbnb? There was a unusual dispute that's recorded. You can Google this of an Airbnb that was listed as haunted, and the people rented it specifically because it was haunted. Essentially, the guest asks for a refund because the home was haunted. The host had agreed that the home is, yes, in fact, haunted, but it's haunted with a friendly ghost named Stanley, which was mentioned in the listing. So the guest agreed that they were aware there was a ghost and they rented it because of that listing. But the ghost was not friendly to them. Instead, it had been terrorizing them, and that is why they wanted a refund. So I guess my question boils down to, if such a case were brought to Beis Din, how would you adjudicate it? On the one hand, you can kind of assume that there's no physical evidence, right? There's no basis in reality for either the claim that the home is haunted or the claim that the ghost was terrorizing them versus being friendly. But if both the buyer and the seller, the renter and the rentee, agree to a suspension of disbelief, um, can you then incorporate that into the law and say, well, based on the fact that they both agree to this made up thing, can we adjudicate it based on those assumptions? That's really what the question boils down to. The next question is about a topic that I don't know if it is listed anywhere in the halacha, but it's a explicit mishnah in Bava Metzia. The topic is called Ein Mefarchasin. It's the idea that you're not supposed to adorn the things that you sell artificially to make them more desirable for the buyer. So there's a mishnah in Bava Metzia. It's Parak Daled, Mishnah Yud Beis, and it indicates that the seller is forbidden from mefarchasin. Adorning is the translation of svaria, an object artificially in order to sell it. Rambam comments that that includes fixing and beautifying it. So I don't know if you have, let's say, a used automobile and it has some scratches or dents. Are you allowed to buffer that out and kind of fix it up before you sell it to make it more beautiful for the seller? What is unclear is essentially any of the halachic parameters that are part of this prohibition. Can you spray fruit with wax so that it looks shiny and more desirable to buy, which is a very common practice? Can you sell oranges in an orange mesh bag? Again, something that's a common practice to make it more desirable for people to buy. Can you sell small products in large containers that makes the buyer believe that they're getting a lot, even though the item is sold by weight and not by size? That happens with like chips and cereal all the time. Can you use like legal, artificial, or even natural dyes to make food product look more appealing? We're not going to get into the whole health issue over there. Can you add animation to toy packaging to illustrate a scene, even if the toy cannot actually do what's in the illustration? You'll see lots of times where there's a commercial for a toy, or as part of the packaging of the toy, it looks like it's active in doing things. That's supposed to be part of the child's imagination, but can you do that as part of a way to sell the toy, even though the toy can't actually do the things you're animating it to do? Can you I think we'll leave it at that for this question. Again, the idea is ein mefarchasin. There is a commonly known idea that part of the reason that the halacha is like Beit Hillel over Beit Shammai is because Beit Hillel put the opinions of Beit Shammai before their own. This comes from Eruvin 13b. Um, that idea is actually doesn't always hold true. There are a number of examples where the opinion of Beis Hillel is recorded before that of Beit Shammai. You can find that in at least three Mishnayos. The first is Peah 6:5, the second is Gittin 4:5, and the third is Sukkah 3:9. So I guess the question boils down to, like, how do we explain examples where Hillel's name comes before Shammai, if we're assuming that the part of the reason that the halacha is like Beis Hillel in general is because they put Beis Shammai first. Another question that I thought was interesting is just exploring when the Rambam's Ikarim kind of came into effect. Right, the Rambam's 12th principle of faith is the belief in Mashiach and that Mashiach is coming. When was the first time that a Jew would have been obligated in such a belief, right? Right after Matan Torah, did the Jews have to immediately believe that Mashiach was coming and that Moshe should have been Mashiach or someone else other than Moshe because he's not from the tribe of Yehuda? Did it have to, was it kind of held in abeyance until they entered the land? And then there were other mitzvos, in terms of building the Beis Hamikdash, and maybe that's when there should have been a belief that Mashiach was going to be the one to build the Beis Hamikdash. Did it not take effect until there was the first king of the Jews, or the first king from Shevet Yehuda? Just a general question of, if you're going to look at the principle of the need to believe in Mashiach, when does that belief need historically first take place? Another question that I put out there, which I think is just a way of trying to explore a Mishnah in Perkei Avos. So the Mishnah in Avos in Perek Beis, Mishnah Vav, says, Avhu ra golgolas achas shetzofa al pnei hamayim. We're going to assume over here this is Hillel, he saw a skull floating on the face of the water. Amar, and he says, at least according to some Girsos, he's speaking to the skull itself, al da'ataft atfuch v'sof mitifayich yitufun. Because you drowned others, that's why you were drowned, and in the end, those that drowned you will also be drowned. Which is, obviously, there's something playing over here in the use of the Aramaic and the sounds of the words, but lots of questions kind of abound in this Mishnah. Usually you don't have a Mishnah in Avos that is based on an occurrence. You have Hu Haya Omer. This was a common refrain of the author, versus he happened to bump into a skull, and this was sort of his response to that occurrence. The other question is, why is this not kind of infinite regress, right? Those that drowned you will themselves be drowned, and those that drown them, again, ad infinitum, right? That's patently untrue. Otherwise, the river would be full of skulls. Why does he need to speak directly to the skull? Right? There's a lot, I think, to dig into this Mishnah to just try to understand it a little bit better. And the last question that I thought was interesting to share is to understand the calculation of the Bnei Ephraim who left Mitzrayim early. The Gemara in Sanhedrin 92b, it indicates that members of the tribe of Ephraim essentially miscalculated the end of Galus Mitzrayim and attempted to journey to the land of Israel, where they were slain by the men of Gat. Some of this is based on Divrei Yomim, Aleph, Perek, Zion, Psukim, Chaf through Chaf Beis. Rashi explains that their calculation was that they began calculating from the birth of Yitzchak, and that's based on Bereshis, chapter 15, pasuk 13. I don't know of any other ways to understand their calculation, but if that was the source of their calculation, pasuk 13, what about pasuk 14, which says, Gam Sagai Asher Yavodu Dana Nochi V'Achreichen Yitz'u B'Rechush Gadol? None of that took place, right? So if you're going to calculate from the birth of Yitzchak, you have to also understand that the subsequent pasuk has to also be fulfilled, that the nation that is exiling you needs to be judged, and you need to leave with great wealth. Where was the judgment of Mitzrayim and the leaving with great wealth for the Bnei Ephraim? And if it didn't occur, then how do we understand their calculations? Again, these are just some of the questions that came up this past week, If you have any answers, please feel free to share them. If you're interested in hearing more of the weekly questions, let me know as well.